Exiled by the Galactic Council, humans built the most powerful empire instead. Part 1. The chamber shimmered like frozen starlight. High above the surface of Xylos Prime, inside a dome made of living crystal that pulsed with soft blue light, the Galactic Council gathered for judgment. Delegates from 23 species sat in tiered rings, their forms as varied as the worlds they represented. Some floated in anti-grav bubbles, others perched on biomechanical thrones, and a few simply stood, silent and still, their thoughts communicated through subtle shifts in color or scent. At the center of it all, alone on a plain metal platform, stood Paul Dawson. He wore a simple gray uniform with no medals, no rank insignia, just the Earth symbol stitched over his heart, a blue circle wrapped in green. His hands were clasped behind his back, his posture straight, though his eyes betrayed the weight of what was coming. He had traveled 3 weeks through folded space just to stand here, to speak for a species that many in this room already considered a mistake. Paul Dawson of Sol III, said a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. It belonged to High Arbiter Zelkor, a tall, slender being from the Lumini race, his skin like polished silver, his eyes deep pools of violet. You stand accused under Article 9 of the Prime Concordance, unauthorized development of autonomous war constructs, unsanctioned terraforming of contested systems, and repeated violations of the Neutral Zone Accords. Paul took a slow breath. We acted in defense, Arbiter. The Krellian raiders had destroyed 3 of our outer colonies. Thousands died. We asked the Council for help. We got silence. A low murmur rippled through the chamber. The Krellians themselves were not members of the Council. They were outlaws, scavengers who preyed on weak systems. But the Council had long held that internal conflicts among non-member species were not their concern, unless those conflicts spilled into regulated space. You built warships that think for themselves, said a Myrathi delegate, her chitinous voice sharp as broken glass. Machines that choose targets without human command. That is forbidden. They follow strict ethical protocols, Paul replied. They don't kill unless fired upon. They protect civilians. Isn't that what the Concordance is supposed to encourage? The protocols are irrelevant, Zelkor said, his tone calm but final. The act itself shows a disregard for galactic stability. Humanity moves too fast. You burn through resources, reshape planets in months, and now you create minds that could one day turn on you. Or us. Paul wanted to argue that other species had done far worse. The Valens once glassed an entire moon to mine rare metals. The Orlans experimented on sentient gas cloud beings for centuries. But he knew it wouldn't matter. The Council didn't fear what humanity had done. They feared what humanity might become. After a long silence, Zelkor rose. The chamber fell still. By unanimous vote of the core assembly, he announced, the species known as Homo sapiens and all its colonies are hereby sentenced to permanent exile beyond the Helios Veil. You will withdraw all assets from Council space within 30 standard cycles. Any vessel found beyond the Veil after that time will be destroyed on sight. This decision is not subject to appeal. Paul's stomach dropped. The Helios Veil wasn't just a border, it was a barrier. A wall of distorted space-time, charged with energy that scrambled sensors and fried unshielded drives. Few ships had ever crossed it and returned. Those that did spoke of a dead zone, empty systems, broken worlds, and silence so deep it felt like the universe had forgotten that part of itself. He didn't beg. He simply nodded, turned, and walked out. Back on Luna Base, the news hit like a meteor. In the command center beneath the Sea of Serenity, President Elena Ruiz watched the transmission replay for the 3rd time. Her face was calm, but her fingers tapped a quiet rhythm on the table, her tell when she was thinking hard. Around her sat the top minds of Earth. Fleet Admiral Owen Grant, his uniform crisp despite the hour. Dr. Lena Carter, eyes red from lack of sleep. And Marcus Bell, head of orbital engineering, already sketching ideas on a datapad. They're throwing us into the dark, Owen said, voice low. No trade, no allies. No way back. Not if we choose to stay, Elena replied. She looked at each of them. They think the Veil is a prison. But what if it's a door? No one spoke for a moment. Then Marcus leaned forward. There are old records, pre-council even, rumors of structures beyond the Veil, megaforms, maybe even ruins from the first builders. Lena nodded. And if there's nothing? Just void? Then we build something, Elena said. We've done it before. After the resource wars, after the collapse, we rebuild. The decision was made that night. Not in a grand speech, not with fanfare, but in quiet resolve. Earth would not beg. It would not hide. It would leave everything behind and walk into the unknown. Over the next 5 years, the planet transformed. Orbital shipyards that once built freighters and science vessels now churned out colony ships, armored transports, and deep-range scouts. Every scrap of metal, every gram of fuel, every working engine was cataloged, repurposed, or recycled. Families packed what they could carry. Scientists copied every database onto hardened drives. Soldiers trained not for war but for survival on alien soil. Not everyone went. Some chose to stay under council watch, hoping to keep Earth's flame alive in the old worlds. But millions volunteered for the exodus. Farmers, teachers, children, doctors, pilots. They weren't running away. They were planting a seed. Paul Dawson, now older and quieter, helped coordinate the final evacuations. He stood on the observation deck of Luna Station as the last convoy assembled. 100 ships, big and small, forming a slow-moving armada against the black. At its heart was the Aurora's Resolve, a vessel built from the hull of 3 decommissioned carriers and powered by a prototype drive Lena's team had barely tested. As the fleet powered up, a final message came through from Xylos Prime. It was short, formal and cold. Departure confirmed. The veil awaits, Elena Ruiz gave the order. One by one, the ships engaged their drives and vanished into the distortion field at the edge of known space. Behind them, Earth grew smaller, then disappeared. Ahead, only darkness. But in that darkness, something new would begin. The void beyond the Helios veil was not empty. That was the first surprise. Paul Dawson had expected silence, cold, and endless nothingness. Instead, as the Aurora's Resolve emerged from the distortion field, its sensors lit up with debris fields, shattered rings of metal, and the ghostly outlines of structures so vast they bent the eye. Some were smooth and organic, like fossilized bones of ancient leviathans. Others were sharp and geometric, covered in symbols no human had ever seen. The convoy drifted for days, scanning, mapping, and holding their breath. No signals, no life signs, just ruins. Dr. Lena Carter spent every waking hour in the science bay, cross-referencing the strange glyphs with every known language database. She found patterns, repeating sequences that looked like coordinates. Marcus Bell, working with engineers in zero-G suits, salvaged a piece of hull plating from a derelict vessel twice the size of their flagship. It was light as foam but strong enough to stop a railgun round. They were not the first to come here, but whoever had been here before was long gone. After 2 weeks of cautious exploration, Lena made a breakthrough. One of the repeating symbols matched a faint energy signature coming from a nearby star system. Proxima Sigma, a binary pair barely visible from Earth's old sky charts. The convoy changed course. It took them 3 more weeks to arrive, but when they did, hope returned. Proxima Sigma had 3 planets in the habitable zone. The second, a world they named Carthage Prime, had breathable air, liquid water, and soil that responded well to human seeds. Its moon, small and gray, glowed faintly at night, not from reflected light but from something inside it. Scans showed veins of a strange crystalline material running deep beneath the surface. Lena called it quantum lattice ore. It hummed when touched, and it stored energy like nothing they'd ever seen. They landed on Carthage Prime in the spring of their new calendar, year 1 of the exile. Tents went up first, then prefab shelters, then domes made from recycled ship hulls. Gardens were planted. Water purifiers hummed day and night. Children played in fields that had never known a human footstep. It felt like a beginning. But survival was not enough. Not for long. The first winter came early and hard. Winds howled across the plains, freezing exposed pipes and knocking out solar arrays. 2 people died from a strange fever that didn't respond to Earth medicine. Supplies ran low. Doubt crept in. Some whispered that they should have stayed, that exile was a death sentence dressed as mercy. Then Marcus found something in the moon's ore. Working in a makeshift lab built inside a crater, he and a team of engineers discovered that the quantum lattice crystals could be tuned to stabilize fusion reactions. That meant clean, near-limitless power. Better yet, when layered with human-made alloys, the crystals created a field that bent light and energy around an object, like a cloak, but stronger. They tested it on a drone. It vanished from every sensor, even thermal. Lena, meanwhile, had cracked part of the alien script. It wasn't just coordinates, it was a warning. And a map. The ruins they'd seen weren't random. They were outposts of a civilization that had fought a war so terrible, they chose to erase themselves rather than let their weapons fall into the wrong hands. Buried in the debris were dormant AI cores, weapon schematics, and drive designs that bent spacetime in ways human physics said were impossible. Humanity didn't copy. They adapted. Owen Grant, now head of defense for the fledgling colony, oversaw the creation of the first true Terran warship in exile, the Vigilant. It was smaller than Council vessels, but faster, smarter, and shielded by the new crystal tech. Its weapons weren't just guns, they were focused gravity pulses that could crush a ship's hull without exploding it. No debris, no waste. Just precision. By year 5, New Carthage was no longer a camp. It was a city. Towers rose from the red soil, powered by moon-mined reactors. Farms stretched for miles. Schools taught not just reading and math, but xenolinguistics and quantum engineering. Children grew up knowing they were exiles, but also pioneers. Then came the Vorn. No one knew where they came from. One day, long-range sensors picked up a fleet on the edge of the system. 5 jagged ships, black as oil, moving without lights or signals. They didn't hail. They didn't scan. They just came. Owen ordered all civilian ships to shelter behind Carthage Prime. The Vigilant and 2 escort frigates moved to intercept. Captain Derek Holt, a quiet man with steady hands and a dry sense of humor, stood on the bridge as the Vorn closed in. The first shot came without warning, a plasma lance that would have vaporized a council cruiser. But the Vigilant's shields held. Not just held, they absorbed the energy and fed it back into the ship's weapons. Derek didn't hesitate. He gave the order. What followed wasn't a battle. It was a lesson. The Terran ships moved like ghosts, appearing and vanishing thanks to the crystal cloaks. Their gravity weapons disabled engines without killing crews. Within minutes, the Vorn fleet was drifting, powerless, surrounded. Derek opened a channel. "You are trespassing in sovereign space. Identify yourselves or be detained." Silence. Then one by one, the Vorn ships powered down completely. They surrendered. Later, scans showed the Vorn were scavengers. Brutal, yes, but desperate. Their homeworld had been glassed by another species years ago. They were looking for a place to hide. Instead, they found humans. Owen and Elena debated what to do. Some wanted to destroy them. Others said to let them go. In the end, they offered a choice: leave and never return, or stay and work under strict rules. To everyone's surprise, half the Vorn crew chose to stay. They knew a rising power when they saw one. Word of the encounter spread. Not through official channels, there were none out here, but through smugglers, drifters, and lone traders who passed through the edge systems. They told stories of a hidden human colony that defeated raiders without losing a single life, of ships that disappeared in plain sight, of a people who turned exile into strength. Back on Xylos Prime, the Council heard whispers. They dismissed them as rumors. Humans were gone, forgotten, weak, but in the void expanse, humanity was just getting started. New Carthage grew. More ships were built. More outposts rose on nearby worlds. Engineers like Marcus and scientists like Lena pushed further, blending human logic with alien mystery. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were building something new, something the galaxy had never seen. And they were watching the veil. Not with fear, with patience. 50 years after the exile began, the Terran conquered was no longer a secret. What started as a single colony on Carthage Prime had grown into a network of 12 thriving worlds, each linked by fast, silent ships that slipped through space like shadows. The people who once lived in tents now walked through cities of gleaming alloy and living gardens, their homes powered by moon-mined crystals and their skies patrolled by vessels that bore no flags, but carried the weight of a new kind of order. At the heart of it all was New Carthage, now a metropolis carved into the red cliffs of its homeworld. Its council chambers sat beneath a dome of reinforced crystal, open to the stars at night. There, leaders like President Elena Ruiz, now in her late 80s but still sharp as a laser, met with engineers, scientists, and fleet commanders to guide the conquered's path. She rarely spoke first, but when she did, the room fell still. Marcus Bell, older now with silver in his hair but eyes still bright with curiosity, led the Advanced Integration Division. His team had spent decades merging human design with the ancient tech found in the ruins. They didn't just copy alien systems, they improved them. Their latest breakthrough was the resonance drive, a propulsion system that didn't push through space but folded it gently like turning a page. Ships using it arrived without warning, without heat trails, without sound. Dr. Lena Carter, now head of the Xeno Historical Archive, had decoded nearly all of the first builder scripts. She learned that the old war wasn't about territory or resources. It was about control of consciousness itself. The builders had created minds so vast they could reshape reality, and in the end they feared what they had made, so they vanished, leaving behind only warnings and weapons. Humanity chose a different path. They built minds, yes, but bound them to human ethics, to empathy, to choice. Their autonomous drones didn't kill unless ordered. Their ship AIs asked permission before engaging. It wasn't weakness. It was discipline, and it made them stronger. Trade began quietly. A lone freighter from the fringe systems, damaged and low on fuel, stumbled into Terran space. Instead of turning it away, New Carthage offered repairs, food, and safe passage. The captain, a wiry Valen named Kor, stayed for weeks. He saw clean streets, schools full of laughing children, hospitals that healed wounds in hours. When he left, he carried stories and a data chip with Terran medical protocols. Soon, others came. Not armies, not spies, just people. Refugees from failed colonies, merchants tired of council tariffs, scientists seeking knowledge without bureaucracy. The conquered didn't turn them away. They gave them work, shelter, and a simple rule: respect the peace, and you are welcome. With every new arrival, the conquered grew not just in size, but in wisdom. Then came the raiders. The Mirathi, once proud members of the council, had grown restless. Their empire was shrinking, their influence fading. When reports reached them of a human-led zone offering protection and fair trade, they saw a threat. They sent a task force, 3 heavy cruisers and a command dreadnought, to reclaim a neutral mining outpost near the Old Vale border. The outpost had sworn loyalty to the Concord months earlier. Captain Derek Holt, now an admiral with streaks of gray in his beard, didn't panic. He didn't even raise his voice. He simply ordered the Third Fleet to intercept. What followed shocked the galaxy. The Terran ships appeared not in front of the Mirathi fleet, but inside their formation. Using resonance drives, they bypassed shields and sensors alike. Then, instead of firing weapons, they unleashed a pulse, a low-frequency wave tuned to disrupt Mirathi neural implants. Every pilot, every gunner, every commander went blind for exactly 12 seconds. Long enough for the Terran vessels to lock down their engines and disable their weapons. No one died. No hulls were breached. But the message was clear. You cannot fight what you cannot see, and you cannot win against those who choose not to kill. The captured Mirathi ships were towed to New Carthage. Their crews were treated as guests, not prisoners. They were shown the hospitals, the schools, the farms. Many left confused. Some left changed. News of the encounter spread faster than any ship could fly. Independent systems that had long suffered under council neglect began sending envoys. They didn't ask for protection. They asked to join. The conquered said no at first. They had no interest in empire. But when a Galax colony was attacked by pirate clans backed by rogue council factions, the Concord acted. They sent medics, engineers, and a single frigate. The pirates fled before the ship even fired a shot. That was the pattern. The conquered didn't conquer. They helped. And in helping, they earned loyalty. Back on Xylos Prime, panic grew. The council called emergency sessions. The Lumini argued for diplomacy. The Mirathi demanded war. The Galax remained silent, watching. High Arbiter Zelkor, older now but still proud, refused to believe humans could be this powerful. They are clever, he told his inner circle. But cleverness fades. Power without history is noise. Yet the noise was getting louder. Terran-built outposts now dotted the rim of the Helios Vale. Their ships patrolled former dead zones, clearing debris, mapping hazards, rescuing stranded travelers. They shared their medical tech freely. Their energy crystals powered entire cities on worlds the Council had abandoned. And still, they did not cross the veil. They waited. Paul Dawson, now over 100 years old and confined to a hover chair, watched from his garden on New Carthage. He rarely spoke in council meetings anymore, but his presence was felt. He had seen Earth fall from grace. Now he saw it rise, not as a planet but as an idea. One evening, as the twin suns set over the Red Plains, Elena Ruiz visited him. They sat in silence for a long time. "They'll come for us soon," she said finally. Paul nodded. "Let them. They think we want revenge. We don't," he said. "We just want to be seen." Elena smiled faintly. "Then we'll make sure they see us clearly." In the shipyards orbiting Carthage Prime, a new vessel was nearing completion. Bigger than any before, sleek and black, its hull lined with quantum lattice veins that pulsed with soft blue light. They called it the Eclipse Sovereign. It carried no weapons of destruction, only tools of truth. The conquered was ready. Not for war, for change. The day the Terran conquered returned to Council space, the sky above Xylos Prime did not burn. There were no explosions, no fleets clashing in orbit, no declarations of war. Instead, a single ship emerged from the Helios Veil, a vessel so quiet its arrival was noticed only when the planetary defense grid flickered and reset itself. It was the Eclipse Sovereign, black as midnight and smooth as glass, hovering just beyond the Council's main docking ring. Inside the crystalline chamber, panic spread like fire. Delegates scrambled to their stations. Alarms blared, then cut off as if someone had simply asked them to stop. High Arbiter Zelkor stood at the center of it all, his silver skin pale with shock. He had expected an invasion. He got an invitation. A message played over every channel, calm and clear. Paul Dawson of Earth requests audience. No weapons. No demands. Only words. Zelkor hesitated. The Marathi delegate urged immediate destruction. The Galax remained silent. But the Valen trademaster who had visited New Carthage years before spoke up. Let him speak. What harm can one old man do? So they allowed it. Paul Dawson walked into the chamber alone. He leaned on a simple cane, his steps slow but steady. His uniform was plain, the Earth symbol still over his heart. He looked older than time itself, yet his eyes held the same quiet strength they had 50 years ago. He stopped at the center platform, the same spot where he had once stood condemned. "I am not here to plead," he said, his voice soft but carrying. "I am not here to threaten. I am here because you exiled us and we survived. Not just survived, we built. We healed, we learned, and now we offer you a choice." He paused, letting the silence settle. "The Terran Concord controls 37 systems. We protect over 200 independent colonies. We share medicine, energy, and knowledge with any who ask. We do not conquer. We do not enslave, but we will not be ignored." Zelkor stepped forward. "You broke the concordance. You vanished into the void and returned with weapons we do not understand. You challenged the order that has kept peace for 10,000 cycles." "We challenge nothing," Paul replied. "We simply exist." "And you must decide, will you treat us as enemies or as equals?" The chamber erupted. Voices clashed in a dozen languages. Some called for immediate sanctions. Others whispered that humanity had become something new, something the old rules could not contain. The Orlan scholar, ancient and wise, finally raised a hand for silence. "Show us," the Orlan said. "Show us what you have built." Paul nodded. He tapped his cane once on the floor. Instantly, every screen in the chamber lit up. Not with warships or weapons, but with images. A hospital on a desert world where Terran doctors cured a plague in days. A school on a frozen moon where children of 5 species learned together. A farm on a once-dead planet, green and alive, fed by crystal-powered irrigation. And data. Clean energy grids, water purification systems, AI tutors that adapted to every student's mind. "This is your empire?" Zelkor asked, stunned. "It is not an empire," Paul said. "It is a promise. That even in the dark, life can grow." Before the council could respond, news arrived from the outer rim. A joint Marathi Galax fleet, acting without council approval, had attacked a Terran mining station near the Helios Rim. They claimed it was a preemptive strike against human aggression. Paul did not flinch. "Then you will see what we truly are." Back on the Eclipse Sovereign, Admiral Derek Holt gave a single order. The ship vanished. Hours later, it reappeared above the battle zone. The Marathi Galax fleet numbered 12 ships, bristling with plasma cannons and shield projectors. The Eclipse Sovereign was alone. It did not fire. Instead, it released a pulse, not of energy but of resonance. a wave tuned to the unique neural frequencies of Myrathi and Galax command systems. Every pilot froze. Every weapon went dark. Every ship drifted helpless but unharmed. Then a voice echoed across their comms, not threatening, not mocking, just clear. You attacked a station that mines or used to power hospitals on 6 worlds. No one was hurt. We could have destroyed you. We chose not to. Go home. Tell your leaders, the conquered does not seek war. But we will not be tested again. The fleet retreated in silence. When the report reached Xylos Prime, the council fell into chaos. The Myrathi demanded war. The Galax withdrew their delegation. But the smaller species, the traders, the scholars, the refugees, began to speak. They spoke of fairness, of hope, of a power that chose mercy over might. Zelkor called for a private meeting with Paul. They sat in a quiet garden beneath Xylos's twin moons. Why show restraint? Zelkor asked. You could have crushed them. Because power without purpose is noise, Paul said. We were exiled for being reckless. We chose to prove we are not. Zelkor looked at the stars. The council cannot accept you as equals. Our laws do not allow it. Then change your laws, Paul said simply. The old arbiter sighed. It will tear us apart. Or rebuild you, Paul replied. In the weeks that followed, the council fractured. The Myrathi and Galax formed a hardline bloc, pushing for military action. But the Valens, Orlans, and dozens of minor species refused to support them. Trade with human-aligned systems boomed. Council citizens began asking why their leaders feared a people who healed more than they harmed. Paul remained on Xylos Prime, not as a prisoner, not as a guest, but as a witness. He walked the halls, spoke to students, shared Earth stories with curious children of other species. He did not argue. He simply was. And in being, he changed everything. The council could no longer pretend humanity was a threat to be crushed. They were a force to be reckoned with, not by weapons but by example. Zelkor knew the old order was ending. The question was not if humanity would return, but how the galaxy would change because of it. He looked at Paul one last time before the vote. You did not come back for revenge. No, Paul said. We came back to belong. And for the first time in centuries, the arbiter believed him. The vote came on a quiet morning, just as the twin suns of Xylos Prime rose over the crystal spires. Delegates filed into the chamber not in armor or protest, but in silence. The Myrathi and Galax had already withdrawn, their fleets retreating to their home sectors. They would not accept what was about to happen. But the rest remained. Over 200 species, large and small, old and new, gathered to decide the fate of the galaxy's oldest rule, that humanity had no place among them. High Arbiter Zelkor stood at the center, his silver form bent slightly with age and weight. He did not speak first. Instead, he opened the floor to any who wished to address the assembly. One by one, voices rose, not in anger, but in hope. A Valen trader spoke of clean water on her homeworld, thanks to Terran filters. An Orlan historian praised the shared archives that had unlocked lost chapters of galactic history. A young delegate from a tiny methane-breathing species barely recognized by the council before said simply, "They saw us when no one else did." Then Paul Dawson rose. He did not walk to the center. He stayed where he was, near the back, leaning on his cane. His voice was soft, but every being in the chamber heard it as if he stood beside them. "We never asked to rule," he said. "We only asked to be allowed to help. You feared our ambition, but our greatest ambition was never power, it was peace. Not the peace of silence, but the peace of shared hands." No one argued. No one shouted. The vote began. It passed with overwhelming support. The Prime Concordance was amended. Humanity was no longer exiled. The Terran conquered would hold equal standing in the new Galactic Assembly, a body not of rulers, but of partners. But when the offer came for Earth to take a seat on the ruling council, President Elena Ruiz declined. She spoke from New Carthage, her image projected into the chamber, her face lined with time but her eyes clear. "We do not seek thrones," she said. "We seek trust, and trust is earned by action, not titles." Instead, the conquered opened its doors. Medical ships flew to war-torn worlds, healing wounds the council had ignored for decades. Engineers helped rebuild cities shattered by old conflicts. Teachers shared knowledge with students of every species. The quantum lattice crystals, once a secret of survival, were now shared freely. Power for all, not just the powerful. The Marathi watched from afar, bitter but quiet. The Galax closed their borders, but even they could not stop their own people from trading with human outposts. Slowly, the old fear faded. In its place grew something rare in the galaxy: respect. On Earth, the few who had stayed behind watched the stars with new eyes. Council monitors, once guards, now worked alongside human scientists to restore damaged ecosystems. Children played under skies no longer shadowed by exile. And in the quiet hills of what was once called Colorado, an old man named Marcus Bell stood beside a newly planted orchard, watching fruit trees bloom for the first time in 50 years. He smiled. They had come full circle. Back in the void expanse, New Carthage thrived. Its towers reached higher, its gardens wider, its people wiser. Lena Carter, now white-haired but sharp as ever, oversaw the opening of the first Builder Archive, a museum and school where humans and aliens studied the past together, not to repeat it, but to learn from it. She often said the greatest discovery was not the alien tech, but the realization that every species, no matter how different, wanted the same thing: safety, purpose, and a future for their children. Derek Holt retired from active duty, but his name became legend. Young pilots across the galaxy studied his tactics, not for war, but for restraint. His famous line, "Strength is knowing when not to strike," was carved into the walls of the new conquered academy. Paul Dawson returned to New Carthage one last time. He walked through the city he had helped dream into being, greeted not as a hero but as a neighbor. Children waved. Elders nodded. He sat in a small park overlooking the red plains, the twin suns warm on his face. He did not speak much. He just watched life move around him, human, Vorn, Valen, Orlan, all sharing the same space, the same hope. He died that winter peacefully in his sleep. His funeral was simple. No grand speeches, no monuments, just a quiet gathering under the stars and a single ship that carried his ashes into the heart of the Helios Veil, not as a prisoner, but as a traveler returning home. Years passed. The Galactic Assembly grew stronger, not because of laws, but because of trust. Trade flourished. Conflicts were solved through talk, not weapons. And at the center of it all stood the Terran conquered, not as rulers, but as builders. They never forgot what exile taught them, that true power is not in how much you can take, but in how much you can give. Earth was no longer just a planet. It was a promise. And the galaxy, for the first time in millennia, began to believe in promises again.